One of the weirdest things about growing up in the States was, despite being called the melting pot of the world, I hardly knew anything about any other country. I grew up with friends from India, Russia, Cuba, Poland, Korea, and a bunch of other places, but I didn't know anything about their cultures or their backgrounds. Even though some of them were first generation and a lot of them were second generation, I would hear them speaking another language with their parents, and if I asked them about it, they just kind of shrugged it off. I saw decorations in their house and I asked them about it, and they didn't really have a reply. They just said, "Oh, it's boring, don't worry about it." I didn't think about it at the time, but I think most of them probably felt a lot of social pressure to fit in, because if you spoke English well and you acted like an American, generally people would accept you. But if you had an accent or if you acted differently, people would stereotype you. So I went through most of my childhood being around people from all over the world and knowing absolutely nothing about it. We had food from other countries, but other than that, there were just these little bits of information, most of which we learned in school, and a few of which we picked up by accident. When I was in university, there was one straw that broke the camel's back. It was this concert called Live Aid. It was an attempt to get the G8 nations to pay more attention to poverty in Africa. I was really excited to watch these different musicians coming from different countries. There were 8 different countries and each one had local musicians too. I went to look for the Japanese concert online because the internet service I was using promised to show every single minute from every single concert, but the Japanese concert wasn't even listed. I am not sure entirely why they didn't list the Japanese concert, but I imagine it was probably because it had more local acts than most of the other concerts. After this concert, I just started questioning everything about why America doesn't know more about the rest of the world and why we're so ignorant about geography, how it's possible that we have people from everywhere and we know so little. It just didn't make sense to me. This isn't strictly an American issue, but being that we pride ourselves in being a melting pot, I thought that was kind of embarrassing. I made an extra effort to try foods I hadn't tried before, and if I heard about some kind of international event or cultural event, I would try and go. I set out to spend all of my time on the internet, which was a lot less developed than it is now. I spent a lot of time trying to understand different cultures, starting with the music and the food. I slowly started to pick up different artists that I like from different countries, and eventually I decided to start studying a language. I made a list of pros and cons from different languages and different cultures, and Japanese came out on top, and so I started studying Japanese on my own, and eventually I entered a class. In the process of learning Japanese, I developed a different personality because the way of expressing yourself in a different language is different, and this really opened up my world, and it helped me to realize that I could create myself instead of just being who I had been up until that point. And so from there, I wanted to know more about the world and learn as many languages as possible. There have been a lot of distractions, so in the end, I only really got fluent at Japanese and Mandarin, but I hope in the future I can learn Spanish and German and a lot of other languages too. The whole reason for starting this channel is to share that experience of how my world opened up and how I studied these languages, how I ended up in Japan, what living in Japan has been like, other places I might go, and other languages I might learn, the whole process behind creating myself. If it's something you're interested in, I also have a podcast called Untangled Knots where I talk to friends from different cultures, most of which I haven't been to or I don't know that much about. And so we get to hear different stories from different people that live really different lives from each other. If you feel stuck or you're not sure what to do with your life, I totally recommend learning another language and, if possible, living overseas. I think it's worth doing whatever you have to do to get outside and to see what's out there. And if you think it's difficult or challenging, then I hope you pay attention to what I put out in the future, because I hope I can make it easier for you. Love you all. Peace.